We are streaming.
We are streaming. Yeah,
Man,
we're streaming like Sunday morning.
whew, that was intense. That was all kinds of technical issues, and we're only an hour late, and I've only had about 3 sips of coffee, and
Yeah, well,
probably about as
we're
many
about to have.
hours of sleep. So,
You had 3 sips of sleep and that's it. So I'm setting my timer here. We'll talk for 10 minutes and we'll cut it after that.
all right.
So we were just discussing the idea of, well, you brought up Duncan Trussell or Trussell,
Trussell, yeah.
yeah, who I'm unfamiliar with. Well, I'll probably get familiar with on the Joe Rogan podcast. He's philosophical, but he's also like a stand-up comedian. And I brought up the idea, or not the idea, but the name Alan Watts. And Alan Watts actually called himself a stand-up philosopher.
Hmm.
And for those folks who haven't heard Alan Watts talk, I feel sorry for you, but I also feel sorry for myself because I don't get to hear him for the first time. When I heard him for the first time, he really blew my mind, right? So it's one of those things, it's like you hear somebody talk, you hear them say some of these things, and you're like, whoa, this is crazy. He has such an open mind, and it's actually very refreshing this day and age where we have so much bias to what we're saying, and I think that bias gets in the way of the philosophy. Like people have a bias, and that bias creates a foundation, and that foundation they build a philosophy on top of that. Instead of saying I have a philosophy, which may lead to a bias or it may not. See, it's all backwards. But now people will say, like, let's take global warming, and they'll say, this is my philosophy on global warming. Well, we all know global warming is caused by apes or something, whatever.
Are
And
you a
say,
global warming shill? Is that what's going on right now?
yeah. Like, well, we all know that, climate deniers and stuff like that. It's gotten so weird that people, it's like, you don't think that the climate changes. What do you call winter? Idiots. You're like, I don't even know what's going on. But so if we have a bias on there, maybe we say we either are a pro, like we believe in man-made global climate change, or we don't, right? That's a bias. That's not a philosophy. But if we build a philosophy on top of that, then it's all, shot to crap. What are your thoughts on that one?
Ooh, well, I mean, it's what stands out to me there is we're presenting it as a binary. It's either it is or it isn't, and like I don't know. I just have a problem with that. There's really what in the world is that simple that it either is or it isn't.
Well, and that's where the philosophy comes into play. Like that's why the philosophy has to be the underpinnings of the discussion rather than the binary is or isn't. Because right now, and we've known that that people get views based on diametric views, right? Polarizing, and that's what gets people. People listen because you listen to it either because you agree with it and you want to hate the other side or vice versa, whatever. And let's switch from, say, like global warming to something that's a little bit less, no pun intended, toxic, if you will, because global warming would make people lose friends. Let's go to robots. So robots, the introduction of robots, artificial intelligence specifically, into our common culture or our work culture. And say, let's talk philosophically about that. Now, if we start at that binary, as you mentioned, level, it's like, well, robots are going to be good for us and robots are going to be bad for us. And then therein becomes a debate rather than a philosophical discussion. And I think the philosophical discussion would start with, what is a robot? Like, what is the makeup of a robot? And we say, okay, what is the makeup of a robot is different pieces of something put together. And it's kind of this thing that walks around or whatever. And you say, well, then a human's a robot. At what point does a human take on robotic characteristics? And do we have, say, many of our businesses run by robots, but are just automatons that are human? They go there and they basically just do what they're told like a human robot, right? So that's more of a philosophical discussion than just like, robots bad, they're going to have kiosks at McDonald's. It's just silly. Anyways, but going to the stand-up philosopher, I like the idea of being able to philosophize and have a little bit of humor along with it than to just say, like, what is with women and their purses? My wife's got 80. That's just, wow, we're doing that again.
Yeah, so this is something that like you've seen this notion of like a stand-up philosopher. This is I mean, I guess in a sense, like I don't know, Joe Rogan is probably in this camp. He's a stand-up comedian and he's also a deep thinker. And like, how do you not bring those thoughts into your act, right?
Hmm. Yeah. I wouldn't say from what I've seen of his act, it's philosophical. On his show, he's philosophical.
Mm. His
And
act's not so much.
his act, not so much.
Okay, I've
So,
actually never
like,
seen him.
yeah. So if you listen to Alan Watts, and again, I go back to Alan Watts, he's more philosophical. One of the more, I guess, popular guys that may be considered philosophical could be Louis C.K.
Mm.
Even though it's an act and he's making people laugh, the things he's doing in his act have like a philosophical behavioral type effect. And I think that that's an interesting direction to come from. I would say that some people who do some TED Talks that add humor, that's kind of like stand-up philosophy, right? So Sir Kenneth, and his last name escapes me. He's a Brit, and he did like probably the most watched Sir Kenneth Robinson. It's the most watched YouTube video, at least the last time I checked. And if you watch his first YouTube video, you'll understand what I'm saying. That would be probably the epitome of what a stand-up philosopher is. And you're watching it, you're laughing, and he's not a comedian, and he's giving you these philosophical ideas. And you say, this is just really, really good. This is what I like. Funny stories are funny stories. They're great, and there's a place for them. I just think we need to have more stand-up philosophy. And I like to do that.
So, do you think this Kenneth Robinson? He's obviously not a stand-up comedian, but more of a philosopher that uses comedy. Is that?
He is, if I got his name right, I'm going from memory, but he works with creativity and education. So he's a proponent for that, and that's it. And he goes and he does talks about that. So he's not a comedian, but he adds humor into his talks, and he's amazing. I mean, it's just an amazing, amazing talk. And it's one of the best, probably if not the best TED Talk out there.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's partially a subjective, I understand. But when you watch it and what he's saying at, and you watch how he presents it, it is simply amazing. It really is amazing. Mm-hmm.
TED Talk describes him as a creativity expert who challenges the way we're educating our children, championing a radical rethinking of school systems, cultivating creativity.
Exactly, which I think is an amazing goal. And knowing that he's just not out there saying, we need to change things or something like that. The way he presents it, you're just like, this is great. It hits you on all levels. It really, really does. And I think that nightclubs, comedy clubs, and all that, they're fine. They're good places. However, I believe that there's a new, or there will be a new realm or a new venue rather, for people who are wanting to do that. Like your local, instead of like your local comedy club place, it's like your local TED Talk stage. So you go and you get to hear like maybe 4 or 5 different people who have these presentations that are very thoughtful. They add some humor to it, so it's not like, I was thinking the other day about my Aunt Gertrude, and she uses a cane, and I think we should have canes with wheels. It's like, that's nah. But to have like somebody thoughtful at presentation, something good, you have a filtering process. So you have it's kind of like going back to the coffee shops of the beatnik generation where they'd have spoken word and things of that nature. But going to another level, instead of having some guy come up, he's like, "Oh, war and not war. Which one? Which one? Woo!" And then people are,
yeah.
Not that, but actual real thought. Yeah. Whoop, 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 whoop. Real good thought. I don't know. What do you think? I think I'd go to that. We got
Uh,
15 seconds.
yeah, I think so too. And 15 seconds. Um, I'm actually, I'm actually looking for a crossover, and this is going to take a little more than 15 seconds, but hopefully not too much more. But something that crosses over from this culture of let's really work on things, let's really talk about things, let's have real discussions, let's have like real grown up um, you know looking at things and taking it apart and putting it back together and coming at it from different angles and just acting like mature adults and trying to improve things, and a crossover between that and sort of into the more entertainment field, where it, frankly, those kinds of like responsible, social responsible, and not just from like the Cliff Notes, versions of social responsibility, are taking place. Like, so, movies and comedy and, all these things that tend to be more towards, let's just tear the other side down, or let's just, really, lean into, liberal, viewpoints. Something that really kind of meets in the middle there. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think actually we're making a full circle, if you will, not in our conversation, but in society, in Westernized society, and we're coming back to basic, rhetoric. That's the discipline of rhetoric. I think that's what we're both saying.
Yeah.
Hmm.
The discipline of rhetoric.
Yeah, the discipline of rhetoric. Hey, let's leave it at that, and
Yeah.
let's drink more than 3 sips of coffee.
Yeah, man. I am 100% on board with that.
Boom, let's do it.
All right. Well, nice short here.
Mm-hmm.
Any sign off?
Um, Nothing other than, of course, if you like this video, go ahead and hit subscribe or hit a like.
There you go.
And also, check out my new book, The Sugar Skull Ghost Thief. This is a shameless plug. Sugar Skull Ghost Thief on Amazon. You can get it on Barnes & Noble and Kobo also. And check out Vinny's upcoming project. You want to say anything about that?
The Creator's Pursuit.
All right. Where do they
That's all
find
I have
that?
to say about that. Best place right now is on Facebook. Look for the Creator's Pursuit, and there's soon to be some new teasers and new content that are being released over the weekend. So hit there, and that's yeah.
Cool. I'm excited to see what's coming down the pipe.
Me too. I'm excited to be able to get this stuff out and then get some sleep again.
Let's do it. All right, man.
All right.
Thank you.
Keep it rhetorical.
Rhetorical.